Hi, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Landed's Fast Casual podcast. I'm super excited to have Josh Halpern, the CEO of Big Chicken, and Sam Stanovich, the SVP of Development and Alliances of Big Chicken, here with me. So we're going to be talking about loyalty today. Loyalty comes in two different forms, employee loyalty and guest loyalty. And I'm going to turn it over to Josh and Sam to kick off. Why does employee loyalty matter, and what has changed in the past couple of years?
I mean, if you think about your guests and the experience that they have in your restaurant, it all comes down to your employees. It comes down to the way your guests are treated. It comes down to the culture that's in the restaurant and people's willingness to prescribe to that culture. And QSR employees they're struggling right now, right? It's the highest turnover for our industry that it's been in 2 decades. We feel we're doing all the right things by our employees, but truthfully, some of that flexibility in scheduling that we have actually prevents them from getting the second job that they need to go from being underemployed to fully employed. So we really need to make sure we're taking good care of our employees. We need to make sure we're providing them with big fun, which is one of the principal tenets of Big Chicken. And we need to make sure that they are excited to come to work every day, so that they can also make our guests excited to continue coming into our restaurant, whether it's Big Chicken or any other QSR fast casual chain in the industry.
Absolutely. Right now, the turnover rate in QSR is nearly 150%. I believe that the exact figure is 144% turnover, which is crazy. And majority of the workers are actually under the age of 25. So they're Gen Z. How is Gen Z different than the previous generations of workers, and how should you be adapting how they need to show up to work to match that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And by the way, the 144% turnover is high, and that's obviously problematic for the industry. But I also want to make sure everyone realizes 50% of people turn over within 90 days. It's 46% turnover within 90 days. So by the time we get them fully trained, they're already moving on, right? And that's great for Landed because you guys get to help us continuously with hiring. But for us, it becomes problematic for our operations as well as all other restaurant chains, right? Gen Z is now the lion's share of the workforce for QSR and fast casual, and they have no attention span. So the more we're able to keep training, engaging, video-based, quick, they want to take information in 8-second increments, the easier things become for us to make them engaged and happy to come to work every day.
Interesting. Okay, so no attention span and need more engaging content. That sounds, it makes a ton of sense because nowadays, I mean, people are spending a third of their waking hours on social media, and they're used to consuming TikTok reels. They're used to consuming Instagram reels. So trying to, I guess, TikTokify or Instagramify the training, the hiring, the entire employee experience for Gen Z makes sense. What do you think is like the immediate next step that people should be taking? And this could be restaurant groups, this could be franchise groups, just given we've kind of moved from Gen Z only making up, 30% of the workforce, and then in the past 2 years jumping up to 70%. Like, what is the immediate next step?
The first one, I think, and I want Sam to jump in here too, but it's really looking at your training programs to make sure that you have the right training and that you're communicating with these folks in the way they want to be trained, right? If, to your point, it's TikTok and Instagram, if the employee is being handed a loose leaf binder and told to go through this training manual, you're already off. But Sam has been more directly involved in the day-to-day, with his other investments. Sam, I'd love for you to weigh in.
Thanks, Josh. And what Josh is leading us down is a great path. And the fact that the next generation wants to know the why. And they want to know why they're being trained, what the backstory is behind it. They want to participate in that process. So it isn't just the read the binder, watch the video. It's the background. And I think that's something that every operator can start doing now. In the cause and effect, we're doing this why, and here's the effect, and here's how it's going to make you a better operator. And then when you look at learning materials, to Josh's point, most of the next generations don't know what paper and binders are anymore. They need to have it where they have it, and that's on this device. So how do you maximize this effectively are two important things.
Yep, cell phone, 1,000%. I mean, it's great because for the most part, many people have smartphones now. I know that for some of the brands that we work with, they might have different types of folks who are working in the front of house and back of house. Is there anything that people should be keeping in mind when it comes to front of house training versus back of house training?
I think the key thing is for front of house, they need to realize that they're guest facing 100% of the time, right? And as a result, it's more than just being technically competent. It's also how do you have the right service mindset as guests come in? Because, our friend Zach Oates from Ovation, he shared a statistic with me yesterday that literally said the number one reason why people get angry when they give reviews is because of service, right? So when you look at negative reviews can be food or service, but when you look at angry reviews normally come from service, which means that person standing at the register actually has the ability to make or destroy someone's day, right? And we need to be training them in that way where they want to make people's days and recognize, that there's consequences for our chain and for our store and everything. When they don't have that service and hospitality mindset, hospitality needs to start from the heart.
And those are great points. The other thing is we need to get back to role playing. The next generations are so used to text messaging or creating a video that they're not used to engaging Generation X or adults or older folks that are coming into the restaurant. So in a restaurant on food, you practice all the time, right? You can't cook by not having your hands touching the chicken, right? It's the same thing at the cashier station. So we need to get the next generation role playing once again because they're not used to the communication and talking to people. They're used to putting it in their phone. And if they can put a video of themselves on Snapchat and post it everywhere in the world, they can talk to a customer, but it's more than 10 seconds. So role play is going to be a big, I think, trend that's going to come back.
Interesting. Okay, role playing. And then we got this phrase, loyalty comes from the heart. I really like that phrase because, when Josh, you and I were talking how when you go online and you look up loyalty in restaurants, it's technology, it's this widget, it's that tool, it's this piece of software, it's this piece of documentation. It feels a little bit sterile, right? I mean, how on earth can that translate into loyalty, which is more of a feeling than it is necessarily a process? And then when you look at other industries, right, loyalty is all hearts and rainbows and it's more about the people. Why do you think that has happened? And, what does loyalty coming from the heart in the hospitality industry, which is literally hospitality, how does that all make sense?
I think along the way we got confused, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we view loyalty programs as really rewards, right? So it becomes a buy 9 cups of coffee, get a 10th one free. Give me all your personal data, get a free order of fries, right? But when you think about what those behaviors really are, what we're saying is, I want to pay you to hang out with me. And that's called something very, very different than loyalty. I don't recommend putting that into Google on a company work computer, right? We need to get back to the notion of loyalty really, really comes from when, as a guest, you say, this brand is a part of my personal brand, right? And the example I would give, and it's a funny one, there's 4 fast casual hamburger chains in my town, right? There's Mooyah, Five Guys, Bear Burger, and Smash Burger, right? And my son is a 6th grader, and every kid we know in the 6th grade, they eat at Mooyah, right? The kids love Mooyah because one of the kids who's like kind of the influencer among this group of friends decided that's the burger joint they go to. And now I eat at Mooyah like 18 times a year because of this one kid who influenced my son, because right now Gen Alpha is heavily influenced by their friends. It's the number one thing that drives purchase. And by the way, don't feel bad for the 3 other chains because we know families where the kids in 8th grade and they only eat at Five Guys, right? It's just the way it works because, kids really do drive so much consumption within QSR and fast casual. But here's the funny thing, right? Like for everyone listening that has kids, right? You're not getting your kid a credit card and they have their own account. You're not getting your kid a cell phone and they have their own plan. They're on your plan. So when my son goes and buys his Muya cheeseburger, it doesn't read as an 11-year-old having bought that burger. It reads as a 44-year-old having bought that burger. So in Muya's mind, I'm there all the time, but I never come in for lunch during the week because I've eaten at Muya 0 times without my boys. 0 times. But I keep getting served promotional offers for come in at lunchtime, Monday to Friday, and get a free milkshake. It's never going to be redeemed. It doesn't make me feel more loyal, right? Because we're so used to this transactional nature. And by the way, I love Muya. I want to be clear on that. I'm not knocking Muya, right? It's just an example. But we've gotten used to this notion of I have to pay you to hang out with me versus actually forming a relationship with what's going on, right? It would be way better if somehow Muya or any other chain knew, hey, we know your son is into sports. We know he has a baseball game this Saturday. Bring him after the game and he could get a free milkshake.
Right.
You got to connect back into our lives. And as we're building a loyalty program, which we're doing from scratch, we're really trying to approach this in a way that's not revolutionary, but it's different for the restaurant industry because we're pulling from how does American Express work? How do hotels work? How do airlines work? How do they grow loyalty? Looking at not just spend, but also visits, and how do we turn on benefits for you when you come X number of times or have Y annual value, or how do we give you benefits when you give us a positive review? We really want to form a real relationship with our consumers and get to know them. And I need to be clear on this one point. It's consumer, not shopper, right? The shopper is the guy who puts their credit card in the machine. The consumer is the person sitting in the booth eating the food.
And I love how we talk about the heart-centered leadership and thought process, because if you look in history and I would challenge everyone who listens to this to think back of their favorite or current favorite restaurants. The loyalty and the reward isn't the driver of why you go there. It's the great food and the people of why you go there. And that needs to come back to front and center. The loyalty, the program, and those are just tactics and tools in the toolbox. But you get down to the people, you're going to win every time. People go back to their favorite restaurant because they know the manager, they know the server, they know somebody in the organization, and they're loyal to it. And that's why. I mean, there's a famous sales stat. People are saying people buy from people they like, right?
Totally.
And we're at this conference and we're talking about that. And we're talking about the folks that are in people's portfolios and why they're there. It wasn't because they were able to do a transactional sale. They're doing it because they like the people and the team. We're working with you and the team at Landed because we like the ethos, we like the culture, and we like the people, and you have an awesome product. So it all comes together, whether it's a restaurant or a product, it's about the people again. And I'm excited about that change.
I love to hear that. I think that when it comes to hospitality, when you walk into a restaurant and you're greeted with a specific type of ethos, people say this a lot, it's about delivering a really amazing experience, but it's also about delivering a consistently amazing experience or a consistently good experience. It's just about consistency really is 80% of the battle. So obviously Big Chicken is growing super fast. Amazing. You're entering into new markets. You have experienced operators who are taking Big Chicken and making it a part of the community. How are you thinking about guaranteeing this consistency of driving loyalty? And this could be employee loyalty or consumer loyalty, but how do you drive that consistency? Because if you're going from one location to 20xing in a year, I mean, that's absolutely bananas. So crazy. How do you think about driving that consistency?
It's why I haven't had a good night's sleep in 2 years, Vivian. It's the hardest thing because you can do 99.999% of things right, but that 0.001 costs you. What I could say is when we started up, we focused on a lot of the non-sexy stuff first. Mm-hmm. We put so much effort into supply chain and training modules in terms of how to prepare our food and how to deliver the best and most consistent guest experience possible. And now we have national supply chain capabilities that allow us to ensure that the food is the same no matter where you go. When it comes to employee, we're learning really, really quickly that this is an opportunity for our organization. We believe we have a fun culture. Obviously, Shaquille is a big and fun guy, right? We talk
Totally.
about big fun all the time. And we're going to spend really the balance of this year trying to codify what that looks like and making sure that we're getting the DNA right. So that as we go from the 22 stores we have open to the 40 to 50 we'll have by the end of the year to the 100 plus we'll have by the end of next year, that we do have consistency in that culture, because every store that we open makes it that much harder to keep our fingers on everything, and we're going to need to ensure that we have the ability for replicatability for this to move kind of into the next phase of our company's development.
And I think what we looked for in Big Chicken and our teammates is we looked that our partners had that same ethos, that same value. We've rejected thousands of applications. Josh and I sit on many calls together, and if the spidey senses don't tingle right, we don't want to do that, because we know that the restaurant business is so much about the brand and the people, that when we're looking and interviewing folks who want to come into our system, we talk about customer service. All of our partners all have multi-unit experience. And believe me, we've had a lot of folks who have had a lot of experience and a lot of money come at us, but just don't have that right value structure, because we are a people first. We want to know, how do they take care of their people? How do they take care of their customers? How do they measure it? Right. And we're looking for those hard details. And then one of the things that Josh set the direction on was, let's go visit our partners, and not let the partners know that we're going to visit, and go see their operations in action. Just like they shop us, we want to shop them and see what's important. So that's, I think, when you look at it holistically, and with Josh's leadership setting that tone and that strength, and with Shaquille being people first, it's very important all the way around.
Yeah, we have 0 franchisees that haven't had a one-on-one meeting with Sam, a one-on-one meeting with myself, and a day of discovery in one of our major locations. And we do that deliberately. No different than you wouldn't want to let a major employee onto your team without meeting with them yourself, even if it's just a confirmation, 15 minutes. Hey, I just wanted to put name to face. We do the same thing with every single franchisee, because our franchising, it's very, very interesting, right? Because on the one hand, they're your team. On the other hand, they're your customer, right? So you need to know that these are people you want to partner with, and that they're the customers that you want to have. So, it's one of those lying with real math statistics. But, we've brought on 24 or 25 franchise groups at this point for the almost 300 stores we have under development. We've turned down over 2,500 franchise applications. Now, granted, over half of them literally start with, yo, Shaq, I'll open up a chicken joint with you, right? So, it's not a real application, I guess. But it's harder to get in a Big Chicken than it is to get into Harvard, right? That lying with real math right there. I know you're Princeton, right? But it's true. We want to have the best partners. We want to have people that will challenge us, that will push us for continuous improvement, people that will treat their employees right, people that have a similar view of the world to us. And so far, that's been going great.
That's awesome. That's incredible. It sounds like you are super busy with meeting a lot of folks, but it's important, because if you're at 22 locations now, you're doubling that by the end of the year. Those are the people who are going to be setting the tone for the rest of the team. And at Landed, we always talk about bar raisers. Every single person we bring onto the team needs to be a bar raiser, not a bar keeper, not a bar lowerer. They don't roll off the tongue as well, but a bar raiser. And if you're constantly raising the bar, Shaquille absolutely did so in much of his career. That's a really great ethos to have. And I think raising the bar of service for your consumers and for your guests is something else to think about. Now let's talk about raising the bar for the industry as a whole, right? Because in the past year, I hear again and again, people don't want to come work for us, or, it's a challenging industry to be in. Doing business in this state versus that state is hard. Well, who do you think is the biggest or what industry do you think is the biggest risk to the restaurant industry as a whole, and to the employee loyalty to the restaurant industry as a whole?
Yeah, they're going to warehouse and distribution jobs, all these Amazon centers and e-commerce centers. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a 270% increase, give or take, in warehouse and distribution jobs that are paying that same $15 to $20 an hour, but you get full health benefits from day one. But here's the number one thing that we need to be cognizant of, and it's why we need to be elevated in the way we talk to our people and the way we manage them. 62% of QSR employees report that they've been emotionally abused by a consumer in the last 12 months. That means 5 out of every 8 employees. I'm not talking about like, man, that guy was a jerk, right? I mean, like, I feel emotionally abused. And over what, right? You forgot to put barbecue sauce in the bag, or the sandwich came out with cheese kind of on the side. Emotionally abused, 62%. So if you can make the same $15 to $20 an hour working in a different industry vertical and get full health benefits and have some of those stress points kind of fall away, more predictive scheduling and those sorts of things, it's going to be where people begin to look more and more, right? That doesn't mean you can't win in a career in QSR. It doesn't mean that everyone is going to have these problems. We just need to be cognizant of what's going on in the situation.
Okay. So that makes a ton of sense. I mean, we're all getting packages every day delivered to our doorsteps. I mean, there are people who are making that happen. So there is this rise of logistics and warehouse type work, even in the restaurant space, like commissary kitchens with like those type of hub and spoke restaurant groups. How for like the traditional like restaurant where, you're coming in, you're ordering at the counter, you're getting your food there, like those obviously open up new potential like vulnerability points in the employee experience, right? So how do you differentiate? Because that this is out there, that the DoorDashes and the Lyfts and the Ubers are out there that are going after potentially the same employees. How do you differentiate?
I think it starts by communicating with your team the way they want to be communicated with, right? And then I think the second piece of it is driving big fun that makes them excited to come to work every day. And we're really fortunate that with Shaquille, he is big fun, right? We're also going to look more and more at recognition programs. I know Shaquille's been very crystal clear that he wants to begin literally posting on social media every so often. This employee within Big Chicken, was inspirational, or this guest talked about the service they got. I want to recognize that. Because if you can be recognized by Shaquille and you're going to be in the QSR industry, that's at least more exciting than being somewhere else, right? So it's how do you bring in big fun? It needs to be done in an authentic way, and it needs to be communicated in a way that they want to be communicated to. The funnel has flipped. Now it's about the employee. It's not top down, right? It's how do you go bottom up? How do you have servant leadership? How do you make sure that you're creating the right experience for your people, curated the way they want that experience to go, with the understanding that there's financial metrics and safety things and everything else that need to happen?
Sure.
Look, at the end of the day, we all have choices now. There's so much opportunity to choose where you work. Why should you work in that organization? Why is that organization the employer of choice? Those are the key things you need to think about. And to Josh's point on servant leadership, right? We're in the hospitality business, not the hostility business. If you're not polling your folks and creating a fun environment, let's face it, we're serving great food. Everybody in the hospitality industry is serving a product. Let's have some fun with it. It doesn't need to be so stuffy, right? Go back to the roots of why we're in this business and what we're trying to do. We're trying to make somebody's day better. And if there's a great restaurant in your market, ask your employees where their friends work at and why. And go check it out. Go see what the competition is doing. There is nothing wrong with going and having lunch and going and talking to a manager. You said, how do you raise the bar? You raise the bar by going to other industry events. You work with your state restaurant association. Go talk to other leaders in the business and find out why they're so successful. This is one of the most open and caring industries that are out there. I am sure, Vivian, in your technology world, The other hiring platforms probably don't give you the time of day. But you go to talk to another restaurant CEO. We were just at a conference, and Josh has got a line afterwards, and he spent time with every single person asking a question. And Vivian, you've been to restaurant conferences. We are opening and sharing. So if you're struggling, ask the question. Reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, and you'll get the answer.
That's amazing. I think like I was just having one of those conversations the other day, and I know that, Gen Z is super, there's a lot of like great parts of Gen Z taking over more of like the employee base. And that I think maybe we don't talk about as much. I think there's a lot of like, Gen Z doesn't want to do this, Gen Z doesn't want to do that. But there are a lot of like great parts of Gen Z, very socially responsible, very want to be connected with their coworkers. So it's kind of to that point of like loyalty and the big fun, right? It's a lot of like experiential type work that they like to do collaboratively. I think maybe because they grew up so digitally native that they really actually prefer this face-to-face, continuous, frequent interaction. I mean, that's why there are social media platforms like Be Real that have popped up, where you don't have this hyper polished like social media presence and you just have a small group of friends. So something that I heard from an operator recently is that they've actually developed pods, for example. So pods of employee like families, like within each location, where you have the general manager and you maybe have your assistant managers, your shift leads, or more tenured employees actually create little family pods within each restaurant, and they actually check in on one another. And I think that that's really cool because, I think that the need for that interpersonal connection and finding interpersonal connection in their job is truly like, we're talking about differentiation. What is going to differentiate you from the, warehouse workers, from other industries where, yes, you come in, you might put your headphones in and you check boxes for the whole day, but like, you're not going to get as much fulfillment as maybe somebody comes in and you're able to give them a good meal. You see that look of delight on their face when they like love, the product that you're serving them. I think that, in talking to a lot of folks in hospitality, they started out from the team member role and they really worked their way all the way up because they love the industry. There's just something about it that keeps them coming back. So I'm going to, given I know we're close on time, I want to hear your final thoughts on
loyalty. Can I address the Gen Z thing before final thoughts? I'm so sorry.
Yes, please.
We need to remember that Gen Z feels failed. They feel failed because they started coming out of college in the middle of the pandemic, right? And we were not at full strength during the pandemic as an industry, right? And they started putting their money into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they watched the crash of crypto, right? So both financially and employment-wise, they feel a little failed, right? And they're looking at this thing saying, guys, you need to let us be a part of this thing. You need to let us be a part of this thing, right? If for this to work, we're creative people, we're well-educated, we're pragmatic, we're not idealistic. We understand the business needs to make money. We understand you need us. Let's do this together, right? And I guess that goes into my final thoughts, right? To your question, right? We need to treat our employees like they're our guests, because they are, right? If only 54% will be with us on day 91, they're just visiting, right? Until we change up something, right? They're visiting, right? So we need to treat them like our guests, and we need to recognize that equally as damaging of a bad consumer review as a bad employee review, right? Because we need people to continuously want to come work with us, and that won't happen if the people before them had bad experiences with us. So we need to make sure that each person that comes in is able to leave the jersey in a better place, and that we're able to leave them better too, right? That we had this great mutual symbiosis for the time that we spent together. And if we can do that with our guests, and if we can do that with our employees, and we can get to the heart of the matter, we will very quickly remember the fact that loyalty starts with the heart. I mean, heck, the Chinese symbol for loyalty has the symbol for heart is the bottom half of that symbol. That's for a reason, right? It's not about technology or apps. It's how do we leverage technology and apps to get back into people's hearts, both employees and guests, and do it in the right way, the authentic way, generation by generation, so that every single person we touch feels heard.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Josh, for those closing thoughts. How about you, Sam?
I think we have to remember that according to the National Restaurant Association, 1 in 3 individuals starts their career in the restaurant industry. How do we keep them here? And to Josh's point, by providing that servant, heartfelt leadership is key. If you treat your team members like family, you create a good work environment, your team members will recruit for you, and they will bring their friends, family, and neighbors to come. And when there's that challenge, if you give them the why, and that's a big part of the generation, they will help solve the problem. So we need to stop being so fearful in that we have a hiring problem and embrace our teams to solve the hiring problem. And if we talk to them more, you'll get a better outcome.
Love it. Thank you so much, Josh and Sam, for the time today. That's a wrap.